I want to talk about this picture right here. Now this picture was posted a couple of months ago on War Thunder's Reddit page. It was posted by Military History Visualized, and he wanted to ask people if they could tell him what brought his bomber down. Now he was a bit intrigued about the damage that it had sustained, and he wasn't sure. Was it flak? Was it a fighter? Was it something else? Maybe bird strikes? No, I'm joking, of course. But he wasn't sure. Now the consensus on Reddit was mainly that it was flak. Now I, of course, saw this picture as well, and I posted my answer to it, and I quite distinctly said that this is not flak. None of this speaks like flak damage. And I want to kind of look at this picture right now with you guys and explain my reasoning for this, and also give you pointers on how to evaluate these kind of pictures that you see so often on the internet. Things get misinterpreted a lot, and then there's this kind of snowball effect where certain inaccuracies in interpretations are just handed down the chain, and that things never really get corrected. And at this point, I would just say that if you do see a picture like this and you start interpreting and you start telling people what you think is on this picture and what you think happened, you also have to tell them that you're speculating. You do not know. And that's in fact also what I did in my post on Reddit. I told everybody I don't have the answer, but this is what I think happened based on the evidence that I'm going to provide. At the end of the day, we actually found out what happened in this picture. But before I clear that up, and I explain to you why I said that this isn't flak damage, why this is a fighter that brought this bomber down, whether I was correct in the end. Now, first of all, when I look at these pictures, I want to establish a little bit of context. I already know this is Heinkel 111. This is a German bomber, of course, that saw service throughout World War II. Features that make this absolutely clear is, of course, the gunner seat up here. This is an early war gunner seat. So this gives us already our first indication. Now next to that, of course, you have these two chaps right here. And the one on the left looks like he has this kind of French army or French policeman helmet. It looks very similar to an Adrian helmet. Now, of course, France wasn't the only country that had kind of these sorts of helmets. I think Belgium had them as well. Switzerland apparently too. So this gives us a more or less geographical location of where this was taken. We are not 100% sure, at least I was not 100% sure, but based on the evidence that I'm going to put forward right here, I think this is a very strong case that you can make. It is, however, once again, like I said, speculation. The time frame is pretty certain because of the version that we have here with the Heinkel. The geographical location is a little bit more off. I'm not 100% sure on that at this point in time. Now, looking at the damage, let's look at the central fuselage right here. We have a lot of small little holes, and we have, of course, the same thing on the left elevator right here. And then we have one or two big holes in the fuselage as well. Now, this is not flak damage. This is also not shrapnel damage. A couple of points speak against it. Now, I'm going to quickly delete those circles right there. But you can see that a lot of the holes, especially on the elevator, you can see that quite clearly. They seem to be pointing in the direction of travel. Yeah, they seem to be coming from behind, penetrating the elevator from our point of view right here. Somebody has, been sitting behind this Heinkel and has been pouring him full of lead. Now, of course, some people thought that this was shrapnel damage. Now, shrapnel damage looks different. First of all, we have to look at the different kind of flaks that we had during World War II. We had light, medium, and heavy flak. Now, heavy flak usually used a delay fuse, meaning that the shell would explode in the air. And if it explodes close enough to a bomber, then it would do quite significant damage because it would kind of, the shockwave already would do damage, but also the metal shards would just rip right into it. And a bomber that receives a direct hit by a shell with a delay fuse, if the shell goes off, that's pretty much good night. If it doesn't, there are actually cases like this, you will just have a penetration. Like there is a couple of B-17s, for example, you see these pictures every now and then, that had an 88 shell penetrate the underside of their wing, go out the other end. And that kind of damage is quite clear because you have this hole, the metal being warped in the direction that the shell was then traveling out to. We don't see any kind of evidence of this in this picture. I'm going to show some pictures right here of bombers that were hit by heavy flak. And as you can see, the damage is quite distinct. Now, a lot of these are very, very good hits. Yeah, you don't see these kind of hits all the time. But this is the damage that you could think of inflicting with an 88. And some of these bombers, well, actually, these bombers still made it back. So, that's pretty good on them. Now, and if you look at the shrapnel damage, there's not a lot of that going on, is there? The way that shrapnel works on these on the 88s, for example, the German 88s, is that if the shell goes off and it is within a 3-meter radius, the Germans did actually a lot of research on this. If a plane is within a 3-meter radius of the shell going off and it is either to the side or above the explosion, not below, below it doesn't really do anything, but above or to the side, then you're going to see a significant amount of metal shearing with all these shrapnel pieces going into the aircraft. If it's between 3 and 5 meters, you're going to see a little bit less than that. And if it's between 7 to 10, you're going to see hardly any damage at all. It was quite a localized explosion, of course, where the destructive force was actually working. Now, a good picture of, for example, an 88 that hits a fighter, but doesn't really do a direct hit, it would be this. You can see the kind of damage that is inflicted on this P-47. And this explosion must have been very close indeed. This pilot was really, really lucky. But you can kind of see how different the damage is compared to what we have on this Heinkel. So looking at the damage right here, we see a lot of directional entries from all these holes, and it doesn't really make any sense. Now we of course also have medium flak, let's say 37 to 45 millimeter. Now there were delay fuses for this kind of flak as well, but also contact fuses. Now if you look at the kind of damage that medium and light flak of course being around 20 millimeter, which uses a contact fuse, generally uses a contact fuse in almost all cases in fact, you see a very localized explosion that can either produce a very clean hole or completely destroyed, for example, control surface. Now, with the pictures that I'm showing right now, you can see some of the examples between 20 and 40 millimeter kind of flak, what you can expect to feel when you're being hit by one of those. And it's not pretty, absolutely not. Now, all these planes, of course, made it back. They were very lucky, but it gives you kind of an appreciation of the destructive capability of one of these rounds if it hits your aircraft. Once again, we see none of that in this picture. Now, of course, at this point, you might point me to the rudder, the huge rudder, really, of the Heinkel 111 and say, haha, look, there's big holes right there, aren't they? Well, yes, and in fact, let's highlight them. Let's look at these 3 circles right here. Now, the top one. Now, I'm going to go out of my way a little bit and speculate even more here, but you can just faintly make it out that at the top part of where the kind of fabric is sheared off, you see this lighter part. And I feel like maybe a round hit there at such a shallow angle that it kind of glanced off and ripped just off the fabric, but it could also be a spar. But that's a possibility. Now let's look at actually at the middle and the bottom circle. Now you can see the middle circle, the way that the metal is warped is quite interesting because it is usually warped inwards. Now the bottom one is of course different. You have the right-hand side, our right-hand side here, it's kind of warped inwards, and on the left-hand side, it's warped outwards. And this gives us some indication of how these rounds were striking the plane. They must have been coming from behind and probably kind of aimed from our side of this aircraft. Yeah, not from the opposite side, but from the left-hand side, hitting in such a way that the metal warps inwards as the bullet strikes, or as the round strikes. Now, these are 20 millimeter rounds, I'm absolutely sure. And this one down here, now it's possible that it came in at such an angle that initially it kind of warps the metal inwards, but then it kind of shears the other side offwards, and as it kind of penetrates through it. But I'm not quite sure on that. But the damage that we see does seem to kind of suggest that. So after looking at this picture in a little bit of detail, we know a couple of things about it. First of all, it's a Heinkel 111. It's an early war Heinkel 111. It is probably on the Western Front somewhere. It's littered with small holes that suggest a rifle caliber ammunition, and it's been hit with 20 millimeter rounds. Now there's not a lot of planes during the early war period that carry a mixed loadout of MGs and 20 millimeter cannons. Now everything the RAF has at this point, let's say early war, Hurricane Spitfires are immediately disqualified because they don't have any 20mm cannons. But the rudder clearly suggests that there was 20mm fired at this aircraft. So that leaves us with a couple of options. We have the German Bf-109. But why would a German Bf-109 shoot at a German bomber? So probably not. So I made the argument back then that based on the evidence that I see, I will speculate that this plane was brought down by a Frenchman. And based on the concentration of fire that you see, I felt like that was a pretty good speculation. But like I said, it is only speculation. Now, somebody else also did a little bit of research, and he actually did background research on this picture, which I perhaps should have done myself. And he found out that, yes, indeed, it was shot down by a fighter. So, in that respect, I was correct. Yes, indeed, it was shot down by a fighter carrying rifle caliber guns and 20mm cannons. Once again, I was correct. But here's the crucial error that I made. And this is something that I can't really have foreseen. And this shows you how even when you have a good structured argument, everything can fall apart because you don't really know what happened. And minor things can completely change the picture. This Heinkel 111, ladies and gentlemen, was shot down in Dübendorf, Switzerland by a German Bf-109. Now, if you know a little bit about history, you know that the Germans sold Bf-109s to the Swiss. And during the German invasion of France, the Swiss defended their airspace vigorously. They shot down Frenchmen that penetrated into their airspace. They shot down Italians. They shot down Germans. They did not care. This is their airspace. They're going to defend it. And this Heinkel 111 was brought down in Switzerland by a German fighter piloted by Swiss in the Swiss Air Force. I'm going to put some of the information on that in the description box below. The site where this information was actually found is in French, so you'll have to maybe use Google Translate if you're not familiar with the language. Overall, apparently 2 German Bf-109s from the Swiss Air Force attacked this Heinkel that got lost. But yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I hope that I gave you kind of some pointers of things that you can use when you are confronted with these images as well. If you did, remember to share this video with your friends and give me an iron cross via those like buttons. If you want to watch more on military aviation during World War II, why don't you check out this video that I made on the IL-2 Sturmovik and their tactics during World War II? Or check out this video that I made about the Stuka Siren. As always, I hope you guys have a great day, good hunting, and see you in the sky.